Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, the podcast where we get under the skin of all things sales to understand what makes this wonderful industry tick. Today, I'm having a chat with someone that, although I've only known them for a couple of years, it feels like far, far longer. Bryan Mulry, recently promoted from SDR to account manager at Salesloft, a company that's quite near and dear to my heart. Bryan is one of the most authentic, wonderful people I think I've ever met. Maybe it's the Irish accent speaking, I'm not entirely sure. But today we go through some really interesting topics, starting with his journey into sales and how it was really planned from the age of 15 onwards, but also going through some key interesting areas around sales itself, such as how, in his words, you need to be a little bit masochistic to enjoy sales. Our internal brand is a thing that can really help you progress in your career, and also how that classic conversation around empathy and listening really is as important as everybody says. Without further ado, here's Bryan Mulry, account manager at Salesloft. Well, Bryan, mate, you and I've known you for years, it feels like. Yet when I look back at the history that we were just speaking about a second ago, your journey at Salesloft has been 2 years now, did you say?
Indeed, 2 years next Tuesday.
And there you go. Congratulations, and almost on a Salesloft birthday then, I guess, in that case. But as a nice summary, you said it just before we went live as well. 2.5 years in SDR, 1 year at Google, 1.5 at Salesloft, now 6 months as you told me, it's a very nice accolade, the youngest account manager ever at Salesloft.
Indeed. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been. Yeah, great to be talking on this podcast today.
Amazing. So I always like starting with those 3 big lessons that we want to learn about today, the tactical advice, whatever it might be. Give me the summary. What are the 3 things that you've got that we'll talk through in a bit?
Indeed. So the question that you asked was, what are the top 3 things that a seller needs to be successful in sales? First one is, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's empathy, it's listening, it's being able to properly understand what the other person is saying, not just what you think they're saying. The second one actually is a positive internal brand, something within your own company or within your own sphere. That's key, and people don't necessarily think about that as much as I think they should. And then the last thing you need to be successful in sales is a little bit of masochism. Like, you have to be able to be very comfortable while being uncomfortable. You've got those contracts out, you've got meetings booked, you've got demos being run by someone else, your fate is in the hands of everybody else. And yeah, you just got to be comfortable with that serious discomfort that you get in sales.
Roll with the punches, right?
Indeed.
Love it. Cool. We'll go into those in a few seconds then. Hang on a second. I want to make sure I write those down, otherwise I will completely forget them and I'll be asking you again, which looks ridiculously unprofessional. Yeah, it would be really hilarious, though, to be fair, at the same time. I mean, I can't believe I'm to write down masochism as one of the 3 titles that someone has given me.
I told you I'd get you a bit of clickbait on this one.
I mean, sales is for masochists is going to be the title of this episode, I guarantee. But give us a little bit about the journey and kind of where you've been so far then. So, as we've already kind of gone through, 2.5 years in SDR, 6 months as the AM, youngest one at Salesloft as well. How did you get into sales in the first place? Because so many people just fall into it by accident. Did you want to go into sales?
This was 100% on purpose. Which is interesting to say in this space. So I started selling when I was 15. I was working on a clothes shop. I was selling clothes. I kind of ran the menswear floor one of the days that I was in. I'm from the middle of nowhere, small town called Ballinasloe, west of Ireland. And I got a Saturday job in there, and it was funny. After a little while, I liked the fact that people would come in, they'd need something, we'd have a conversation. Throughout that conversation, money would change hands, and it kind of clicked for me one day when I was selling somebody a full rig out. Like, they were getting suits, jackets, shirts, jeans. It was like a yearly shop all in one. And as they were leaving, they said, "I only came in for socks." And it was just, and now I don't put that down to me, right? I don't put that down to me as a person. But what I was able to do in that sense, and what I really kind of loved the idea of, was we kind of found through the need of the Muse and socks that they also needed some boots and then the rest of an outfit, and then they had a wedding coming up, so they might look, we may as well get it all sorted now. And it was one of those things where I was helping guide people through a process, or guide them through these purchasing decisions, and just helping them out with that. And in doing so, I'm able to help myself in it. But I started when I was 15. I then went to college at 18, spent I had my very first sales job the summer out of my first year in college. I was one of those really annoying people on the street that are like, "Hey, could I have your bank account details for this charity?" I tell you what, that teaches you a lot. I think it was some of the best sales training I've ever received in one of the worst toxic environments imaginable. Um, this was your kind of typical young lads who thinks that they're the Wolf of Wall Street, earning, you're 18, you're earning 400 quid in a week. How does that happen? Um, and then a lot of them blow it on particular things. You kind of learn about your own spending habits when you're suddenly getting a little bit of money in. But that was a 100% commission job. And in doing that, I didn't necessarily fall in love with sales, but I fell in love with the version of me that was growing through sales.
Mm.
Um, and actually, in order to do that job, because it was 100% commission, I also took on another gig, which was working in a 5-star bar and restaurant, and I worked in a couple of theatres as well in Ireland. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a massive musical theatre kid. There's two things you can get me if you want to message me about anything. Two ways it'll pique my interest: musical theatre and brownies. Either of those, that's how you pique my
Brownies.
interest. Yeah, man, I'm a fiend. So throughout this time, I was serving really wealthy people, and they were all lovely. They were some of the nicest people I had met, and I kind of learned what it was like in that sense to be someone who earns a lot of money, and who it was a different interpretation to what I had thought it had been, because when I was younger, I most certainly did not grow up in a family that earned a lot of money.
Mm.
Not that we were poor by any sense, but I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so whatever you're earning, you divide it among
It's
7.
shared around.
There you go.
Yeah.
Then in college, I started in SaaS. So in typical Irish fashion, a guy who knew my granny was running a SaaS company. He needed a young lad for a summer, and through connections of connections and my talking abilities, I was able to get in there. I spent a year and a half with him, and with them, I did a lot of research on their expansion into the UK. So I learned about global expansion. I learned about their product. I learned about different markets, marketing, and by the end of it, I had rewritten their entire customer journey. I kind of looked at it from the customer journey standpoint of what are the different points we want to interact them with, and what does the customer funnel look like. I then quit that job in December 2019 because I wanted my last semester in college, 2020 of January 2020 to May 2020. I want to just be a student. Then COVID comes in February and kills that.
Yes.
But so I was unemployed for the first time after finishing college, and then I joined Google. So I came on as an SDR because I had spent that time in SaaS. I kind of knew the space, and I'd worked in both the marketing and somewhat sales side. Spent a year in Google, 6 months as an enterprise SDR, 6 months as a part of the digital natives team. So essentially, as an enterprise SDR, you were teaching old companies, hey, get off the little servers that are living in your bedrooms, please put them in the cloud. Then for the small tech companies, it was, hey, you've built on this platform, come grow on our platform. That was essentially the pitch. What I didn't like about that was I was talking to these CTOs and CIOs, and they'd come to me with all these problems about data not syncing, or data warehouses not being big enough, or these things. And I just go, yeah, cool, someone inside of Google will fix that for you. Come on in, give me your money. And I was an SDR, so I was just passing the info on to people. And I didn't care. During that time, Google bought Salesloft as a tool to use for their BDRs, and they needed an EMEA guinea pig. I was the EMEA guinea pig. And in doing that, I kind of got a sense of this is what sales should be like. I ended up hitting my Q2 target in 4 days thanks to the software. And then
That's sandbagging to the extreme.
do you know what? It was quite that was quite a day, especially early in a sales career, to be able to kind of hit something like that. And then, directly after that, I said, okay, I want to sell Salesloft. Then I went through the process of making sure that Salesloft thought it was their idea to hire me, and then spent a year and a half as an SDR here before last February moving on to be an account manager. Now
There
I
we
kind of
go.
help our customers get more use out of the platform, and also make sure that the contracts that they have accurately reflect what they need. So 10 minutes in, that's the last 10 years of my life.
A good little storyteller. I enjoyed that.
I appreciate it.
So the easy question to ask off the back of that is, what's next? What's keeping you going with Salesloft, for example? I'm sure it's been through loads of changes over the last couple of years. You moved on from Google at one point. not trying to say, will you admit on air that you're ready to leave Salesloft or anything crazy, but what keeps you going? What's your driver in sales?
So the way that I work, very simply, with regards to my life decisions, is one right next step at a time. I couldn't tell you where I'm going to be 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, whatever. I literally just moved house to Bath. It's where my girlfriend lives, and I guess now where I live. That decision was made back in January of last year, or sorry, January this year, because it was the right next step.
Mm.
If I set a goal to be X title, X company, X earning, whatever, in 3 years' time, that's as far as I'll go. I'll get that. I'll get that title and that company or that paycheck in 3 years' time. The way I see it is, if I take the right next step, as and when it presents myself, I can surpass that quite easily. I won't be limited by my own imagination there.
Mm.
What's next is we're changing things up slightly in Salesloft at the moment. So my job is about to change drastically in September. The way I interact with my customers won't, but kind of my day-to-day life will. So that is the right next step for me. I will come on as a junior account manager. I'm still a junior account manager, but it'll be a slight change. And then once I get to the end of the period with that, I then either move up or I move on. When I was an SDR, I knew it was time to move on because I was teaching people stuff that I myself had been taught 2-3 years prior. I will get to a stage as an individual contributor where I will be teaching people stuff that is rudimentary to me but new to a bunch of others. That's when I'll know, okay, I've stopped growing. I'm in a period of comfort. I need to move and grow in some other direction.
It's the whole like being the smartest person in the room, if not the smartest person in the team, in that sense, right?
Oh, I'll never be the smartest person in this team, but no. But there may be a time where I am the most experienced at my realm, my role, and I need to grow in some way to keep myself challenged.
That's what I mentioned at the AM team or the SDR team, for example. Yeah, spot on, cool. And obviously the whole theme of carrot and stick is it's about management, right? It's the carrot or the stick. That's where the name comes from, believe it or not. How do you like to be managed and motivated? What do you see as the best relationship you can have with your boss?
There is a serious difference between a manager and a leader. And I need a leader who can also help me understand the management piece. So the way I'll describe that specifically as an account manager, someone who closes business, is managers will track what you're doing, help you with time management, and they'll kind of help you manage your deals or work your deals or kind of do some creativity with your contracts. A good leader will be able to do that, but they'll spend more time on getting the most out of you. What will motivate me won't motivate one of my colleagues. They'll need to pivot between one or the other. Some of the best leaders I've ever come across inside of Salesloft speak very differently to me than they do some of the other people on their teams. Not because they're two-faced or any way, shape, or form, but they know how to get the most out of that person while making that person feel valued. And so how I like to be managed, very simply, is I like to co-create with someone in a way that makes me feel as though I'm providing benefit to the leader the same way that they're providing benefit to me. That's kind of how I like to do it. So
interesting.
When your targets are aligned, easiest way I can describe it. I can describe it. As an SDR, I worked under a leader, Rob Byrne. Not that I'm not working under a leader now, but this is an easy way to describe this. There was a very specific month where I was overachieving. There was one SDO, one opportunity that I could have sandbagged. Sometimes it's what you do in sales. You kind of need it. I'd rather start the next month on one than on zero. I was chatting with Rob. He was one away from his target. And I went, well, okay, here, look, I've got this thing. Let's just toss it in. It's one of those things where he and I were able to co-create in such a way as I'm able to provide for him the same way that he's able to provide for me. And he provided a lot for me in my time as an SDR, both in the individual, here's some reports of customers to go after, but also figuring out why I would rather go into account management than being an AE, or why I would rather stay in Salesloft than move into a different sector, a different space. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I like co-creation, and I like to help the person that's helping me.
It sounds like a basis of mutual respect as well, where it's not like almost viewing that you're inferior to someone else or you don't know as much, for example. It's more that you know different things and have strengths in different areas, and it's helping each other, right?
Yes, but I'm also in a space where I'm at the beginning of my term as a closer AM. I kind of need someone to kindly call me out on my bullshit. I kind of need someone to be able to go, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Let's do this. So again, Salesloft. Simple example. This happened in my current job. Caitlin, my current manager, she helped me realize that one of my biggest mess ups I've ever done on a deal was I dropped our license price lower than what we would normally do. It made sense to me as and when I was having conversations with the customer as a junior AM. And she showed me a different lever that we're supposed to pull as AMs to reduce the amount that they're paying, but not necessarily lose ARR on our side. And I went, I should have known this. Now, did she beat me up about it? No. Did she? There was no way for me to know that this was a lever you pull in this role. She didn't beat me up about it, but she went, "Hey, I'll help you get through this. We'll do this time. That's fine." She then had to handle some flack on my end, but I then learned very quickly how to get around that and do it through in the future. So I made one mistake and I've learned and grown from it, but I wasn't made to feel bad for making that mistake.
I mean, that's as much on you as it is on her, right? Yourself to realize and have that maturity to say, I made a mistake, I can learn and grow from this, and on hers to not chastise you for it and, air quotes, tell you off like a conventional boss might in some cases, right? It was again more about, oh, hey, here's the proper way to do this.
Indeed. Yeah, I think so as well.
I like it. You've kind of already gone into a couple there as well, but I'd love to hear a couple of stories as well before we really dig into those three topics. What's the proudest moment you've had so far in your career? He's like, oh, where do I start? There are so many.
Proudest moment in my career? Hope you enjoy editing this silence out.
Producer Callum's problem, not mine.
What is the proudest moment in my career? Fuck, I haven't thought of that. I want to give you a good story here.
I've broken Bryan. Here we go.
What do I have? Got it.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. So that's an interesting one. One specific thing that's come to mind. Look, there's a bunch of things I've been able to help a bunch of people start their career as an SDR. I've been able to give SDOs to people or opportunities to people who needed them to hit target as an SDR. There's a lot of things that pop to mind as an SDR. I think this one is a little bit more recent, but the proudest thing that popped into my mind was me showing myself that I could do the account management job when I was very new in the role. So I came in and I took on, and very suddenly there was a couple of deals in my pipeline because I had taken on some accounts that had been owned by other AMs. And there was one deal. It's the largest deal I had had at the time. It was pretty sizable. It was about a quarter of my quarter's target. So it was pretty big. And I looked at it and I went, what is going on here? And I had to watch a bunch of videos very quickly. And there was a meeting was put in my calendar for Friday morning on Thursday afternoon. That was a follow-up to what the conversations this customer had already had. And I went, okay, I'm going to need to push that back because I have no idea what's going on with this customer. So I said, hey, I'm your new account manager. I'm still trying to get caught up. Can we move this to next week? And they replied, no, we were certain you would have a response to our problem by this date. And I go, all right, tomorrow morning it is. Thankfully, I have a tool like Salesloft. And that is not me shouting it out, but this means that I get to watch all the videos back and I get to very quickly find what was going on. And it was a significant, deep technical issue that we had to go in the background and find out. The two people who had been working on it, one was on paternity leave and the other one wasn't with Salesloft anymore. So I went, all right, so now I got to go and fix this. So there came a time where I kind of jumped in the next morning, handled that conversation with them, understood their use case and was able to give them as much as I had been able to give with myself. And then through that rest of that process, we kind of, at the end of that call, they came out of it going, all right, Bryan's fixing this issue for us. There is a way around it. Next time, without being demo certified, which is one of the things we have internally, I simply showed them what the workflow would look like for their sellers. Thankfully, I've been using the platform for 2.5 years, so I knew the answer to this question. And they were like, cool, I'm really excited for this. I would love this to be the workflow my sellers use. We then followed up with getting some sellers involved. We followed up with getting the rest of it involved, and it ended up landing that deal a little bit larger than I had expected it to, and it came in exactly on time. It was a deal where essentially it's like you've been thrown 3 chainsaws and you have to juggle them. You have to juggle the technical side, the time commitment side, the commercials, and all through this feeling as though you're capable enough to do it and not necessarily running to your manager and going, hey, can you handle this for me? I pulled in a lot of team members for that. Members of the customer success team, the value engineering team, the sales engineering team, my own manager on the commercials, her manager on some of the commercials. But it was one of those things where at the end of it, I went, cool, I can handle these big deals. I can go through this and the customer can come out of it feeling comfortable with Salesloft, and I can come out of it getting, the revenue that I need to get out of it. And when you ask me about what I was most proud of, a bunch of different things came to mind about impacts I've been able to have on other people and impacts of things I've been able to give to people and things like that. And even proud of myself and the growth that I've had. But this one is the one that came to mind recently because I was able to go, okay, you're able to do this and you're able to do it well. You didn't scrape by with this. You put the work in and it worked out. Now you can run that process again. That was the one that kind of taught me that even though I had grown from SDR to AM without necessarily having the experience to do it, I had the adaptability to be able to make it happen. It's a very self-aggrandizing story, but I hope it kind of tells that the proudest thing I've been able to do is teach myself that I am what I thought I was, which is an interesting way of putting it.
To me, it sounds like a kind of lesson for yourself in ownership, where it's you kind of mentioned this earlier on, almost being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Indeed.
Yeah. And just getting used to throwing yourself in that kind of situation, showing that you can stretch further than what you believed you could. And that for yourself was like, wow, I can actually do this, right? It's that realization.
It's more of a, as you're flying, realizing you can fly.
Jump and then hope that gravity doesn't exist, right?
Yes, exactly.
Got it. No, I like that one. It's a nice little story. Okay, I actually want to do the 3 points that you mentioned earlier in reverse order. To start with the fun one, Masochism. Look, I just love it as a title, as a summary area for the podcast. But talk to me about this thing. You said every single salesperson's got to have a little bit of that to be able to succeed in the role. Talk to me about that.
So masochism is me being just hyperbolic, obviously. But
but I'm definitely going to lean on it hard. It's a great marketing line.
Yeah, clickbait. So what I mean with that is, look, I think this might be coming at me because my end of quarter is coming up very soon. But sales reps spend a lot of time in uncertain ways and in pain, really. Like you'll see these deals go out. You'll have these conversations with people. Everything will be sorted, quote unquote, in your brain. And then, as is the nature of our business, as is the nature of the world, you'll think everything is sorted, and then a bomb will go off. And you're a professional firefighter. You gotta put that out real fast. And the world of sales, you kind of have to be able to handle that discomfort. It's not that you make it a comfortable existence. It's that you put the systems in place to know this pain is a good thing. This growth is a good thing. This discomfort is a good thing. This annoyance is a good thing. I can, whenever our largest deals close inside a Salesloft, it is always in the notes. We lost this deal so many times, but then in the end, we got it through. And like, you have to be able to lose the deal multiple times before getting it in. And that's why I mean,
what does that mean then? Losing the deal multiple times?
Look, CFOs get involved and kill it. Someone in revenue operations says, I'd rather not use this tool. I'd rather use the tool that I already have. It's no, this doesn't sync with this. Yes, it does sync with this. It's being able to know that there are so many little things that can kill a deal if you allow it to. But if you trust in your own process, you can know that even if you, quote unquote, lose the deal multiple times, if the CFO says no, or if if the RevOps doesn't work, the integrations don't work, or whatever, you can still know that's part of the process, and you don't just crumble underneath that. Now, that's not to say that you force all these deals through, but it's to know, okay, this is just part of that process. This is something that I need to get used to. This is something that I'm uncomfortable with right now. as myself with the number of contracts I currently have out and how close I am to the end of quarter, I'm in pain. I'm in emotional turmoil at the moment. But this is part of the process. And when I log off at 5 o'clock today, I go, cool, that's that done. I'll come back to that pain on Monday.
Park it.
Hope.
Park the
Yes.
trauma and head to the pub. Sounds like. Yeah, it's an interesting one where I think about like when I've seen new salespeople, new recruiters, whoever it might be, when they go through the process of becoming an AE, a consultant, whatever it might be, and then they start losing one or two of their first few deals they get in, and they're just like, oh, like, ow, like that stings. Like they expected it to be easy, they'd have a higher close rate, for example. And I think like what you're saying is you have to get you so used to rejection, whether you're an SDR or an AE, it doesn't really matter. You will lose things and it will feel completely outside of your control. It will feel unfair, but it's going to happen, right? So you have to get used to the pain is the real message there.
You have to enjoy the pain as well. I say that
Embrace
lovingly.
it, be molded by it.
Kind of do though. It's more of a like when the deal dies the first time, you kind of got to get that hit of adrenaline of okay, it's real, let's go.
Yeah.
It's when there's no problems in the deal that you actually have a real problem. Someone's talking about you behind your back and you know nothing about it.
That's always the worst. Nice. Okay. And then let's go to the cliche one, empathy and listening. Talk to me about that.
Look, it's pretty standard. Customers say things that they don't mean, and they don't say things that they do mean. But also, I like to run off a philosophy of nobody's actually trying to mess me around. Like nobody's actually trying to be a bad person to me. So if I'm good to them and they're good, they will be good to me back. That's kind of how I operate. I kind of have to operate like that. So when I talk about empathy and listening, it's more of a people will do and say things that really annoy you, you know, especially towards the late stages of deals. They'll say things you go, we've discussed this multiple times and we had an answer, and you'll think that everything's right on your side. And instead of writing that email, hey, see above, please, you kind of got to go back and go, all right, this person is asking me a legitimate question. I'm going to not assume ill intent. Let me reply in such a way. Yesterday I got on a call with a customer. We have an auto renew policy inside of Salesloft. For anyone who didn't know, that means you have to give a certain amount of notice. Unfortunately, one of my customers didn't give enough notice, and they were quite upset with that. And I had to go in and be able to go, look, I'm sorry I've had this experience. And they were talking about legalities, and the kind of point that comes out of my brain is they were talking about the legalities, and I said, right now, if we continue down the legality question, it's going to be a me versus you. It's going to be me explaining our position and you explaining yours. We're not going to get anywhere. I'd rather we spend this time working on a solution that you're happy with. And then, you know, the walls went down and we came to a good agreement. But not thinking that the world is against you and kind of thinking, all right, I need to figure out what's going on their side, or also it's advantageous to me to know what's going on their side. Is particularly important. And then as for listening, customers just don't tell you everything. And if they do tell you everything, they've left out a bit. So listening back to your calls and listening back to things and properly probing down lines of inquiry instead of hearing what you want to hear, that's also a key thing in sales.
Cool. This calls a real curious point around the tactical side of things there, because obviously I think most software companies come up against that. You have to give us so much notice. A customer goes a few days over and goes, well, I still want to leave. Like, what are you going to do? Like, force me to come and pay you? Like, come and rob me point blank? And it's like, well, no, but you contracted in. How do you deal with that kind of situation? Obviously, no names to be given here as well, because it's a customer relationship. But how do you handle those kind of conversations? Are there times where you have to turn around and say, yep, you know what? You can walk away if you're truly that unhappy? Or is it you have to make it work and they have to stay?
So unfortunately, I don't have that power. The power to do that resides somewhere else. My job as an account manager is not to force you into something. It's to deal with the situation that we're in together. I have a signed contract here, and there are consequences for what happens next. My job is to get the right result for the two of us within the powers that I have, and that's the message that I go to them with. It's not, hey, you're trapped. It's, look, this is the situation that we're in. If we don't sort something out by X date, you're going to get this bill. I have some levers I can pull here. but let's talk about the reason you wanted to leave. What was happening? Were you not getting enough value out of it? Do you need more training? What's prompted this decision? Have you gone to a competitor? Cool. Which one? Maybe I can change our pricing slightly. It's things like that. But sometimes there just aren't levers I can pull. Sometimes there's just not things like those situations are very unfortunate. With ourselves, that then ends up in a different team. That ends up the billing team and the finance team. I haven't had that happen much. I've usually been able to resolve these situations. Not because I'm a fantastic seller, but they don't want to be in the situation either. So coming to them with being like, hey, let's sort something out, rather than, hey, here's the legality of your contract, typically is a better approach.
A race to the bottom, no one really wins, right? And that's exactly what you go to when it comes down to, I went out, well, you can't leave, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's no good to them, it's no good to me.
No, makes total sense. And then your third and final point then was around internal brand, which I thought was a really interesting one, because brand is, when you hear the word brand, most people think, oh, personal brand, LinkedIn, social media. But you explicitly said the word internal, not external. So talk to you about this internal brand piece.
So whenever you want to change your jobs, whenever you want to grow in your role, there are two elements of that. One is the end decision maker who has to hand you a contract, and that's usually a buying committee as well. That's not just one person, it's finance and HR and all that stuff. And then you've got the people who will advocate for you when that person says, hey, what do you think about this person? So especially for me as an SDR, I had decided that I wanted to go from SDR to account management. For that, I needed the account managers on the team to want me on the team, the people who work with the account managers on that team to want me on the team, and the hiring manager to want me on that team, plus the recruiters. So then you build your quote-unquote brand with those people. I started to help the account managers with their tricky customers. I started to help the customer success team with their customers and how they did their job, and learn about them, listen to them. I started to communicate very specifically with my own manager. This is where I need to go. What do you need to see from me? What needs to happen there? And then I also communicated with the hiring manager on the other side, going, hey, I want this job. What do we have to do to get me there? And then when that hiring manager went and asked everybody else, what do you think of this person? They had an answer. If you don't want to grow inside your own company and you want to grow somewhere else, SaaS is huge, but it's also tiny. Like, everyone kind of knows each other. If someone is hiring someone from Salesloft and they've worked with me, and this person knows me, they'll ask me, hey, what do you think of this person? And unbeknownst to some of these people, I'm very happy to say that every time I've been able to give glowing reviews, I've been able to say they're a great hard worker. They've come from this place. They've done this. It's fantastic. And I'm hoping that other people will do that for me in the future as well.
I'll always back you if someone asks me, mate. Don't worry.
Appreciate it. But it's more of so building those internal brands, those personal brands internally, will help more than you think they will. And then building the external personal brands, employers see that as an asset they're importing, but it's not necessarily. It's an add-on. It's not table stakes. Table stakes is, do your team like you, and can we prove it? Yeah,
massively. The whole conversation there is so interesting, because you can think of, I can't think of like names, but I definitely know stories of people who inside an organization, let's say they're an SDR and they really want to be an AE, they'll be knocking on the front door constantly at their boss's door, proverbially or otherwise, and just being like, I want that promotion or I'm leaving, like almost trying to force it through. And you know full well that is not going to hold you in long standing, whereas what you're really prescribing here is more of looking like a relationship map of the organization you're in. Who do you need to influence for you to be in that position? And not in a way that you're forcing it through, but being willing to spend time investing in those relationships, showing that you are the right person for it, so that you have almost like with their clients and customers, you have someone to refer you and back you, rather than just kind of blindly hoping that you're the right person.
I'm going to butcher this story. It's not mine. I've heard it third hand. And this is not what I did, but I think it's a good kind of lesson to hear. There was look, in America, we know how big the sports are, and there was a specific coach who wanted to pick specific players for his team. He wanted those players to choose his team to work with. And when he identified those players a year in advance before the pick, whatever, I can't remember the sport, I think it was baseball. And what he would do is he would get close with the people who was close to that player. He would get close to their parents, their partners, their siblings, their friends, their colleges, their whatever. So that when the time came for him to approach them, he'd already built that circle. that sounds cynical. That sounds what I'm talking about. That sounds tactical. That sounds almost like psychopathic. But
Obsessive almost, yeah.
obsessive. But the point that I want to make with that is, if you ignore the spheres of influence around what it is that you're trying to get to, they're going to ignore you back. So you kind of have to be cognizant of them. You don't necessarily have to do what that coach did, although it was successful for him and his role. Once you know who makes the decisions, you then do what you can for that. It's politics more than anything else. But politics sounds calculated. I don't like it to sound like that.
It does, but I know exactly what you mean when you say it. Yeah, and it's true for pretty much every hire that we've made as a company. We're 35 odd heads now, and every time we hire someone or look to hire someone, the first thing I do is go on LinkedIn and see who do I know in any way, shape, or form connected to this person. And it might not be like a second direct connection. It could be someone that's worked in the same company as them, that maybe they are nowhere near connected on LinkedIn or know each other particularly well. But it's who they can introduce you to. And a great example is we're hiring for like a marketing leader right now. I know someone that worked at the same company as one of them, but never worked with them directly. But obviously he knows someone who did work with them directly. And so just by kind of putting feelers out there and just saying, look, I know you didn't work with them directly, but you must know people who did. Would you mind me asking them a few questions? People can talk and find out about that. And it's almost the ultimate message you're going for here is just kind of do good. You say internal brand is kind of the much more professional way of like wrapping it up. But I always say if you can be nothing else, be kind, because it will always get you further forwards at some stage or another.
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice summary of what I was getting at for the last 20 minutes.
You've got it for the more political angle of internal brand.
Indeed, internal brand politics. Get that person to know your name.
That's exactly it. Now, the interesting thing is I was going to come onto this call, and when you said internal brand, I was thinking about talking about it then. But like the one thing that always stands out for me, it's not even just internally, but externally, you come across as very authentic, I feel. Like every conversation I've had with you, I've never felt like it's a agenda on your side. We're a customer of yours now, so clearly it works at some point or another. But over the years that I've spoken to you, it's never really been the agenda of, right, so when are you buying this stuff I've got to sell to you, for example? It was always very much a when the time is right. So you've had that product experience arguably as an SDR. How much it carries across to being an AM, I'm not sure. But how important to you is things like patience and being authentic and waiting for that right time to have a real conversation, rather than doing what seems to happen in LinkedIn DMs every single day, which is being pitch slapped by people with zero consideration for timing or their situation?
So I actually don't operate like that. In where you're talking about, whereas I'm going to wait for you to come to me with the thing. It's more of a this is going to sound like a massive cop out, but I kind of the way I go to it is the less pressure I place on any kind of situation, that if I don't even focus on any kind of outcome, the more likely that outcome becomes. Which is the opposite of the whole manifestation, go for your goals type thing that people hear about. But it's more of a sales reps are particularly intuitive people. We're professional communicators. That's our whole gig. We're intuitive people. I sell to sales reps and work with sales reps all day, every day. If I try and sell you something, you're going to know.
You can smell it a mile away.
The worst thing that I can try to do to a sales rep is sell them something. But I can't explain situations. I can provide knowledge. I can provide value. So I guess the way that I like to approach it, with yourself coming on to Salesloft, for example, it wasn't that I was like, okay, if I talk to Derry and I answer his questions and I talk to him and we have these conversations, then one day he'll buy Salesloft. That's not it. It's when I'll have these conversations, and when the time comes, Derry will consider me. And then we'll have that conversation then, and it may or may not go the way I want it to go, but it's kind of I can get value from that. Or if you had never come to Salesloft at all, and I got an SDO out of that at that point. But if you guys hadn't come on, I'm sure that at some stage I'd have been able to provide more value to you. You'd have been able to provide value back. And if not, then we had a couple of good conversations. I have conversations with a bunch of different people all the time. One day they might come to fruition, one day they won't. I will tell you, the tactical part of my brain, which isn't as switched on as I'm portraying in today's call, but the tactical part of my brain says that a lot of my stuff that you'll see online is peer-to-peer. It's SDR to SDR, AM to AM, seller to seller. Part of my brain says that if I keep with that, those people will be sales leaders in 5 to 10 years. And the impression they get of me now will be will be better over the next 10 years. That's not why I do it, but if I'm focusing on the benefit, that's probably the benefit. That something will come later on down the line because of what I'm doing now. If so, great. If not, I still have good conversations, and I still get to talk.
And just because that person isn't the right person for you, it doesn't mean that they can't be an advocate for someone else to be the right person, right?
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to that brand piece, the respect, the referrals, all the rest of it builds on itself.
I'm just trusting that. Yeah, it's funny the way you say that. If you do good and be good, good will come.
If you can be nothing else, be kind.
Yeah. I mean, if I can do this stuff, look, if it comes back to me, great. If it doesn't, I don't lose anything, so that's fine too.
No, there's certainly, if nothing else, be kind. Spot on. One thing I didn't ask earlier on is a kind of final question to wrap things up here, as we are about at time. Horror stories. I had your most proud moment. I'd love to hear a horror story, because I think the impression so many people get on social media is that everything is always fine and glam and there's never any issues. But everyone has got a horror story that they look back on and just think, oh my God, that was horrific. Maybe not something you did, but something that happened to you, for example. Just give us like a...
I'm very happy.
I don't want to say a low point because that sounds depressing, but just give us something funny maybe from your career.
So I had a guy... so there's two here. A horror story is very recently one of my deals halved in value because of a stupid mistake that I made, and it's just one of those things where you look at it and you go, "Oh God, I will never make that mistake again." But it has cost me a significant amount of money right now, and it's just one of those things. It's just a small little detail oriented. I missed that, and as a result, it went a different way. And I go, God damn. And it happens to every seller. It's just there's so much we've got to manage. You missed that piece. The story that came to mind actually is I took a call as an SDR a year ago, I think, from Salesloft. It was with the CRO and the VP of marketing. And I had booked it with the head of business development who didn't join the call. I had a good conversation with him. And essentially, I was joining this as a discovery call, asking questions of the VP of marketing and then the CRO and VP. Asking questions of VP business development with VP marketing and CRO joining to kind of listen and hear what we had to say. I joined. VP business development had been let go, and CRO and VP of marketing in that call essentially bulldozed me. I had never been bulldozed before, but they had already decided that Salesloft was the worst thing in the world. They had already decided that we were a spam cannon that could not be used for anything other than impersonalized messages. They had already decided that that I myself was too young to know how the software itself worked, which is the key piece that I knew about. Did I know how to run a multi-million organization? No, couldn't tell them that. I could tell them how to run a sales cycle. And I had never been bulldozed quite so badly before. People, like the CRO, began laughing during the call, and I had never had that experience before. And I kind of got off it afterwards. And you're in those booths in WeWork, and you kind of push open the doors, and the fresh air comes in after you turning it into a sauna. I remember looking out at one of the customer success reps and just laughing. I'd be like, I've never been spoken to like that before. I've never been bulldozed. That's crazy.
Bit surreal.
Well, then I sent some clips around the SDR team, and we had some good crack with it. Because that's one of the pieces of this. You just got to know that these things are going to go badly, and it didn't make it easy to go through that. But the horror story there is, I couldn't get upset in that moment, because getting upset would mean that I valued the opinions of these people, and I just couldn't do that in that moment. But yeah, that was a particularly tough call, trying to navigate it and trying to go through it.
What can you do except sit there and just take it, right, as well? You can't just you can turn around and be like, well, this call wasn't productive, but then full well they could get even more aggressive elsewhere about it. So it's just like, you got to take it, right?
Yeah. You sit there, you do the call, you leave, you get a cup of tea and you go again.
Yeah, I remember one of the first ever demos I did back when we were building our company, very early days. Went to go and demo to Vitality Health Insurance. Went to Stockport. I don't mind naming names here. It was that long ago. He'll laugh if he hears the story. 7 odd years ago, went to the office in Stockport, like 200 people on the sales floor. Sat down with him and 2 of his sales or BD staff, going through the demo, and 10 minutes, and he goes, Derry, I'm going to stop you right there. I have no fucking idea what your software does. And I was just like, God, And he basically just said, like, what does it do? And I just crumbled. I had no idea what to say, really. I knew it was lost. Like, you know, when you don't have someone's like attention for a start and they don't really like understand what it is you're on about, and you're just like, you know what, I can't save this. Admittedly, the product was very different back then, a lot poorer than it is today. So I look back at that and just think, if that's the low point, everything else is a bonus.
Indeed. Yeah.
Those stories really shape your opinion of future experiences, because now you might get bulldozed again for 5 minutes. You'll be like, oh, at least it wasn't 20 minutes to 30 minutes like that last call before. It kind of sets the bar for low.
I hadn't thought of that. I've been bulldozed since, and I've kind of been able to turn it into a bit of a dance. That's wild. I hadn't thought of that. I never thought of the experience of that specific call and how it's had an impact on the calls I take now. But yeah, you're not wrong. You've made that connection.
You're welcome for the revelation.
I appreciate it. I'm going to put that in my diary and talk to my therapist about it.
Well, Bryan, it's been an absolute pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you. Like I say, it always comes across really authentic. I love the stories. I think you're a really captivating storyteller. Just hearing you speak is just fun. Maybe it's the accent, and maybe I really like the Irish accent.
It's going to have to be the generic Irish accent. I will say,
it definitely helps.
Who's listening to this, one piece of advice that I like to give to people after webinars or podcast events like that, whenever you hear somebody speaking at an event or podcast, stuff like that, send them a LinkedIn connection request and say, I really enjoyed your talking on whatever. Not because you'll get a response, not because anything like that, but if you then need something from me later on in the year and you reply over that and say, hey, what do you think of this? Or, hey, can I pick your brain about X, Y, or Z? I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to see, oh, this person watched that podcast. Cool. We have a connection. Yes, they're asking me for something. I can give that back.
Yes.
And it's how
I'm pretty sure that's how we connected in the first place. Was I saw a video of yours on LinkedIn of some kind.
It could well have been.
I liked it, and I think I said that. Yeah.
It could well. And now look, how many years later? But that's just a piece of advice for people. If you ever come across anything, send them a connection request. I enjoyed your thing on this. Don't ask for anything back. And then if and when you need that person, you're more likely to get something. Might be useful for you. See, I'm going to try and provide a little bit of value at the end.
No, I love it. Get hold of Bryan on LinkedIn. It's a real short message there, I think, to round things off on.
Yes,
thank you very much, though. Thank you very much, good sir. I hope the end of quarter goes well over the next few days, and hopefully do this again sometime.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.